Good morning and welcome to today's episode of WTVA Distance Learning, brought to you by the New Albany School District. My name is Luke Tentoni and I have the honor and privilege of being the assistant principal at New Albany High School. Today's episode contains two different segments. First of all, a great segment by Miss Bridget Spencer, a kindergarten teacher at New Albany Elementary School. She's going to give you 10 great tips to get your kindergartner not only ready to start in August, but also be ahead of the game when they arrive. Followed by Mr. Robert Garrett, who has some great tips about all your camera settings on your iPhone or your iPad. We hope you enjoy our show today.
Good morning, I'm Bridget Spencer. I teach kindergarten at New Albany Elementary School, where I've been teaching for 12 years. Parents, I'm going to give you 10 tips on how to prepare your child get ahead of the game when they walk into the kindergarten room. 1 is colors and shapes. 2, sorting. 3 is patterns, recognizing and forming patterns. 4 is counting to 10 or number identification. Number 5 that we're going to talk about is your fine motor skills, which often we forget about those. Number 6 is rhyming. Number 7, your concept of print. Number 8 is writing your name or recognizing your name. Number 9 is letter identification. And then number 10, one of the most important that we almost tend to forget is your listening skills. Okay, so today I have materials that I brought from home. Hopefully you will have some of the same materials at your home, and that's why I tried to find things at my home so that you could replicate these same activities. And what I call it an activity, but in the classroom the children really like when you call it a game, because we know research shows that children learn through play. So I'm going to show you some play games. So the first one was colors and shapes. Well, we all know the very fun game of Candyland. Okay, Candyland, you can even as preschoolers. Okay, the preschool age love to look at the colors, and this will also be a game that you can reinforce colors with your child. And I do want you to listen, even if you have preschool age children, because a lot of these games or activities can be adapted to a preschool age child. You could get just a sheet of paper and ask your child to draw or to write something that is a specific color. So I may ask them to draw something that's green. And you really wanted them to think about a real life object that is green, like a tree, or on this paper, a caterpillar. That's just a piece of paper, but you could turn that into a little book. Okay, where they could read it over and over. They could add illustrations to their book of the colors. Another fun color game is Uno. Okay, Uno is something that when I always take it into my room at school, they're like, Miss Bridget, you're going to let us play a game today? And we're like, yes, you're going to get to play Uno. So you're looking at colors and you're looking at numbers whenever you play Uno. And another thing about card games with little children is that actually holding the cards in their hand can work on their fine motor skills. Another thing with popsicle sticks is you can actually just draw the shape onto the popsicle and it becomes a puzzle. And then they have to put the popsicle together like a puzzle, and then you see, and they can tell you, hey, I have the circle. Okay, so we have a circle, or you could do rectangle, triangle, all of those. So that's just kind of a quick summary of your colors and your shapes, okay? So now we're going to move on to sorting. Now we know we can sort a lot of different ways. We can sort by color, we can sort by size, we can sort by shape. So I'm going to give you just with color. First thing, I thought of food, cereal. So if you're eating cereal and they're eating, and they can have a little extra cereal by their side, and you can sort by color just to see if they can move those cereals by color. By size, coins. We just have coins. You can use your quarter, you can use your penny, and you can use your dime, and they can sort by size. Just give them, you may want to clean it off and then just hand it to them and say, hey, sort this by size. So that way you would see if they could sort by size. So that's going to work on your sorting activities. Now the next one is patterns, okay? And a lot of different things you can use for patterns. This is a necklace, okay? And so I've started a pattern. I just have the yarn and I have a straw. I had several different color straws at home that I just cut into pieces, and they're not all the same size pieces. You want to do different sizes so that you can see patterns of not only color, but patterns come in sizes as well. So once you start the pattern, you would, put the next one here so that they can finish the pattern for you. And then that way they can make a necklace and actually wear the necklace. Another thing that you could sort, of course, any foods that you're thinking of that you have around, you could sort the food or the candy. I had the coins for the other activity, so I thought the coins, you could make a pattern of the coins where I have 2 quarters, a dime, and a penny. Well, what would come next is the quarter. So you want to start your pattern over just so that they know that the pattern is finished, and then what would come next. So I have a quarter, dime, penny. Then I have the quarter starting over. So then they would know to put another quarter to start the pattern again. So that is our patterns. Now we come to recognizing or counting to 10. I was thinking about straws, but straws were a little too thick, so I have a Play-Doh base, and I got aluminum foil and just kind of rolled the foil to make it hard and to make it stand up. It's same cereal, and you may say, okay, I want you to roll the dice again, draw a card, or you may give them a number. Let's say the number's 2. Well, I want them to be able to string 2 of the cereal onto the aluminum foil there. And then they could even practice writing with their finger the number 2 inside the Play-Doh. You could also, if it moved on to a higher number, you could do patterns with this as well. Okay, so that's still knowing, okay, so 3, but how many is 3? So I'll put the 3 on there. Another activity that uses fine motors, this is something I bought from the Dollar Tree, but it is, you might have some tweezers. These are just kind of bigger tweezers that we use in class. So this I have is a egg carton, okay, and I have just random numbers 1 through 10 inside the egg carton. Then you could get just some cotton balls. If you don't have an egg carton, you may have muffin tins. You can do the same thing with muffin tins, and you just write the number inside the muffin tin or in your egg carton. And this activity, you're going to they're going to look at the number inside the crate or the tin, and they're going to pick up the ball and place it into that. So if I'm looking at number 3 here, so I may pick up and I'm going to place 1, 2, 3. Okay, and so then I'm picking it up, that's working on pressing down for your pencil grip, okay? So that's working on that, and then knowing the number and how many goes there. Same thing with the muffin tins, I can place 1 there, okay? So that is some ways that you can still counting, recognizing your numbers and counting. Another way, if you want to just be able to recognize your number, you may want to play, you can put, this is just on construction paper, a memory game. Turn it over if your child's having trouble just recalling the number. Hey, I don't know that number. Well, it's a 5 and they're missing 5 every time. You could make a memory game and then play, and they could turn over and find the match of the memory game. So that's more of just recognizing your numbers. Okay, all right, so we're going to move to fine motor skills. And this one, fine motor skills are so important to grasping your pencil, zipping the backpack. You know, they're going to have to close their backpack, zipping up a coat, buttoning their pants when you use the restroom, opening food for lunch. Yes, teachers help children open food, but they get so excited when they can do it themselves. So that we're going to work on some things to help those fine motor skills. One of the first things is cutting that I talked about earlier. And I know that using scissors can be very scary, but this is something that needs to be practiced and modeled for your child, and it's definitely something that you could sit there and watch them do. Okay, so when they are grasping the scissors, it's always important to tell them to put their thumb in the smaller hole, your fingers that's comfortable at the bottom. But make sure your thumb is pointing up, and we always cut away from ourselves. Okay, these are just some little fun craft scissors, but regular scissors will work. So I have the Play-Doh again, and so at first it's thicker and they hold. You're going to have to show them how to hold their hand away from the scissor. Okay, so I'm holding over here and I place the scissor and I'm cutting the Play-Doh. And then you can form the Play-Doh back and cut some more. Okay, once they have mastered that skill, if you would like to, all I've done is drawn some little shapes on a piece of paper. So they can grab a piece of paper. You could do paper, you can do cardboard, and I'm going to show you some of those in just a little bit. And get those scissors, and once again, watch their hands. That's the important thing, and make sure they're cutting away from themselves. Okay, so we've got straight lines, we've got squiggly lines, and they could sit there and you can do those just one after another, and that's a lot of fun. They will enjoy that. And then another activity is you can make a puzzle out of, this was Go-Gurt. And so we cut out a puzzle, but just piecing the puzzle back together and trying to find how the puzzle works is another good skill to work on. So we're going to go to rhyming. Our sixth skill was rhyming. Now rhyming is kind of hard to actually have an actual game or activity at home to do, but it's more auditory and listening to do your rhyming. So one of the things you could do for preschool for sure is keep listening to nursery rhymes. Okay, play nursery rhymes. Let them sing nursery rhymes and ask them what words do you hear that rhyme. A popular song that we like to sing at our home is Down by the Bay, and using those rhyming words. Something you can do just sitting at the dinner table, say, I see something that is, I have a word and it is ham. I want you to come up with a word that rhymes with ham. And maybe they'll say jam. So it's not necessarily something that you see, but you can just give them a word and see if they can actually form a word with the rhyming. You could do a scavenger hunt. You could tell your child, okay, so I want you to find something in our house that rhymes with bat, or I want you to find something that rhymes with clock, and they may go get a sock. I want you to find something that rhymes with hook, and they may go get a book. Okay, some of those things are going to be more verbally. You're going to have to tell them those things. Something that's a little bit more complicated is cutting out of a magazine. You could have them actually find the rhyming pairs in a magazine, and that's kind of hard to do because they're not going to be on one page. You're going to have to turn the pages, and they're going to have to really think, well, what is it that I'm looking for that rhymes? To make that skill. So like this one, I have a jar, and after you could cut pictures out of a magazine. To make it a little easier, you could cut pictures out of a magazine and say, okay, I have the jar right here. I want you to find the picture here that rhymes with jar. And so they will look and they'll say, oh, here's the car. The car and jar rhyme. But that's something that's going to take a little preparation for you to go through a magazine to find. And that's often the way children at school learn rhyme is through pictures, but we have lots of different puzzles and pictures. So the next skill is concepts of print, and this one's very, very important for a child and very important for the parent because they're going to have to model this. This is being able to hold a book. So when you're reading with your child at night, in which we encourage you to read daily with your children, you hold the book. Let them hold the book. Show them how to hold the book. Ask them where the front of the book is. Ask them where the back of the book is. Point to the title. See if they can point to the title of the book. You open up the book and say, okay, well, what do we call these? Oh, they're pictures. You know, pictures can tell a story. And so I'm sure your child could even tell you a story about the pictures. And then when you read to your child, one thing that often as parents we do, we just start reading the book. But something that you can go ahead and teach them so they will be ahead of the game for kindergarten is actually using your finger. We call it tracking print. Now as adults, we know how to look at the word and, you know, go from word to word. But we teach the children how to place their finger under each individual word. And that is tracking your print. So that way when you're reading, and they'll model you if you'll go ahead and place your finger under each individual word. The next skill is writing your name, and we're just going to kind of take this first step at a time. So writing your name is important because they're going to have to write their name on everything we do at school. But the first thing is children need to be able to recognize their name in a group of other names. So if you write down several names, it can be family member names or made up names, and you have them just circle a name, their name out of a group of names, that means, hey, they can recognize their name. So you could just circle the name. And then after they're able to do that, you actually can reorganize the letters of their name so that they know the letters of their name and how they are arranged. This is a game that you could put down on the ground. I just did little note cards, but you could do the sidewalk chalk again and write the letters of the name outside, and they could hop on it. Okay, hop on the first letter, hop on the second letter, hop on the third letter for this name. And tell me the letter when you hop on it. Okay, so I see a M. I see the E, and I see the G. So they're hopping around and they're forming their name. This is without writing yet. This is just going through verbally telling you the letters of their name. And then the very last thing is you could let them practice writing with a pencil their name. And so what you would do is you would write their name with a bright color crayon and let them trace. And you do a bright color crayon so that way they can see where the marks they made. And I just drew lines here so that they would know that there is a little bit of a boundary, but to make sure that, remember that when we write our name that we're just writing one capital letter. The very first letter is the only letter that's capitalized. And I know that's hard because capital letters are easier to write for children, but when they're writing their name, if you're going to be ahead of the game, you want to make sure that they're using those lowercase letters where they're supposed to be. So now we move into letter identification, and this is a fun one where you can look everywhere for letters and just start talking to your children about, find this letter. Well, what is that letter? Like a newspaper. Let them circle. If you're sitting there in the morning reading the newspaper, give them a piece and let them say, okay, circle all the P's, and you give them a certain color. Circle all the I's, this color. So you can use newspaper. You can also use cereal box. You can cut those letters out of the cereal box and just ask them, okay, find the T, find the Y, and that way you have something tactile that they can actually look through and do. Another fun activity is if you have a Nerf gun, you could put letters all around on a wall, tape them up, and they could tell you first, okay, I'm going to shoot the A. So here we go. So let's see if they can shoot the A. Or you may say, I want you to shoot the X, and then see if they can shoot the X. So it can go back and forth. You could also play balloon toss. We love balloons and just popping them up in the air. Wherever their hand touches, you get them to say, okay, I touched the J, or I touched the T, and just go back and forth. Or they could sit there and do it and just move it all the way around. So that's another way to just recognizing your letters. Our last skill, and one of the most important skills, is our listening skill. Now, our listening skill is important because children are listening to verbal directions all day long. They're trying to communicate with their friends. They're socializing with their friends. They are learning how to form words, to speak, the ability to read. And one of the very first things that I think parents should do is to model to a child of, okay, eye communication is very important. When someone is speaking to you, that you need to use your eyes and look at that person that is speaking to you. But some of the games that you can play, and I don't have a lot of hands-on activities for this because once again it's like rhyming, it's more verbal. So you can say, you can play Simon Says with little children and see if they're listening enough to do that. You can play the broken telephone game at dinner and say, well, if you want to start out with one word, you can say one word, but then form a sentence and see if it goes around 3 or 4 people, if they can repeat the sentence. I like to go to the mall. Okay, see if they can repeat that sentence. Another one is, I went to the zoo and I saw a monkey. Okay, well, when the next person says, I went to the zoo and I saw, they have to repeat what I said. And they also have to think of an animal that they saw. And that's where the communication of the visual, like looking at the person, can help them remember what I saw at the zoo. To work on multi-step, you could tell your child, I want you to go in your room, get the red bear, and come place it on the kitchen table. Okay, and just see if they can do those multi-step, that two-step direction. And if they can't, just keep giving them two-step directions to keep practicing those two-step directions. This is a fun activity because we all think we're pretty good listeners until you have to draw it on a piece of paper. So something as simple as just grabbing a scratch sheet of paper and say, okay, grab a crayon. And you can give them directions. However, like the directions of this one was draw 2 small circles at the bottom of the page. Okay, so we got 2 small circles. Draw a cloud at the top of the page. We have our cloud here. And then the next direction was connect the 2 small circles with a rectangle. So once again, we're using our shapes, and you're seeing if your child is really listening and being able to take those things that they hear and put it down on paper. So just a little writing activity that they could do for those listening skills. I hope these 10 topics were helpful to you parents to try to get your kids ready for kindergarten in the fall.
Hey, my name's Robert Garrett, and I want to welcome you to today's technology tip. In today's technology tip, I want to teach you everything there is to know about your iPhone or iPad's camera. Okay? Now first let me say this. It's important when you're looking at the camera and the camera settings is to know how the hardware works on the phone. So the camera on the iPhone is much better than the camera on the iPad. So if you have both and you're videoing, it's always best to video with the camera on your iPhone first. That's your best option. Also, the screen ratio is a little different. So the iPhone screen ratio is the same as your TV in your living room, 16:9. Your screen ratio on your iPad is 4:3, so it's a little more of a square. It's not a square, but it's closer to a square than your phone. So if you're videoing something that you intend to put on a television, then using your phone's a much better option than your iPad. Now let's talk about hardware. The camera on the back of the phone is much better than the selfie camera on the front of the phone. So if you're taking a picture or a video that's important to you that you want to keep forever, then take it using the lens on the back of the phone, okay? Now let me tell you another tip. If you think about the shape of your television sits on the wall like this, okay? It doesn't sit on the wall like this. So if you're taking video that's real important to you, take it horizontal, not vertical, okay? All right, so now let's dive into the phone settings. So I'm going to go to Settings, and then I'm going to scroll down to where it says Camera, right here. And I want to walk you through the recording settings in slow-mo and in regular. So if I tap on Record Video, look at all the options I have. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 options, okay? Let's talk about the top one. The top one says 720p and 30 frames a second. So first let's talk about frames a second. 30 frames, 24 frames, 60 frames, 100 and 240 frames is how many little pictures are in each second. So you think about the little flip books that people used to draw and they would flip and it would make it look like motion was happening. That's exactly what your phone does. That's what every camera does. So 24 frames means there are 24 individual pictures per second. 30 frames means there's more. There's 30 frames, 30 pictures in every second. 60 frames, 60 pictures in every second, and so on and so forth. Now, some people say, well, I'm going to always shoot 120 frames or 60 frames. They think, well, more is better. Well, that's not always true. The frame rate you shoot with should be determined by what you're shooting. So in Hollywood, they do everything in 24 frames a second. Well, why is that? Well, it creates a cinematic look, but also the less frames per second, the less storage or hard drive space they need to store what they videoed, okay? So if they're shooting hundreds of hours of footage, then if they do it at 24 frames, they have there's less needs for storage, okay? So if what you're videoing is intended to look more like a movie, then 24 frames is great. News broadcasts and Jeopardy and shows like that are filmed in 30 frames a second. And then sports is often in 60 or above, right? So what you're filming determines your frame rate, okay? So if I'm videoing my child play soccer, I'm gonna do that at 60 frames, but let's say I wanna video him and I want it to be slow-mo, well, I might get 120 or 240 frames a second. Now the 720 is the lowest setting that's still considered HD, okay? 720p it's not standard definition, but it's very low high definition. When you get into 1080, that's more high def. That's what most people's TV at home is right now. Then when you get into 4K, that's a huge high resolution image, okay? 4K is double the size of 1080, all right? So 4K is great, but the problem is it requires a huge hard drive, a huge amount of storage. And you can see right here on the phone at the bottom, it tells me that if I record 4K in 30 frames a second, that'll be 170 megabits download. If I do 1080 in 30 frames, then that's only 60 megabits. So the 4K is triple the size, right? So you would need a large hard drive. So if your phone is always out of storage, then you don't want to really record in 4K. So when do I record in 720? When do I record in 1080? And when do I record in 4K? If I'm recording something that, say somebody asks me, how do you do this or that? And I'm going to text it to them, and then I'm going to delete it right after I text it to them, well, I'll record that 720 because it texts really fast, okay? If I'm doing just my normal everyday video, I'll do 1080 in 30 frames, right? But now let's say my son has a birthday party, and this is video I want to keep forever. I'll do that 4K in 24 or 4K in 30 frames because I want in 10 years for it still to be considered high quality, okay? And then if I want to do a sporting event, that's when I go into 60, 120, or 240 frames a second. So say you're a baseball coach and you're evaluating your player's swing, okay? You would want to do that in either 120 or 240 frames a second so you can see all the detail as you videoed it, okay? So I hope all those details help you understand your iPhone's camera settings and your iPad's camera settings a little better. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed the lessons brought to you by the faculty of the New Albany School District. Be sure and visit our website at www.nasd.ms. And to all my students at New Albany High School, remember, if nobody's told you they love you today, you better know that I do. It's a great day to be a Bulldog.